Okay, Nina, we'll start. All right. A very warm welcome to each one of you to this masterclass on grief sensitivity. We have a very special speaker today, Professor Dr. Neena Verma. I've known Neena for many years now, and I've known her and I've looked at her with awe and admiration for the person she is. I'll just take a couple of minutes to introduce her to you. Dr. Verma is an applied behavioral science expert with over 3 decades of rich experience in leadership consulting, training and coaching. Okay, sorry. And counseling and therapy for individuals and families in grief and trauma. Unfortunately, Nina lost her young son in the year 2014. And like I say, I've watched her over the years with awe and admiration because I've seen this wonderful human being use her knowledge of grief, use her understanding of grief uh, to help so many others despite her own. And while her work in grief started much before that work, before her loss, uh, she, you know, she has since devoted herself deeply to grief healing, resilience, post-traumatic growth, compassionate and meaning-inspired life, apart from positive change and appreciative leadership. Nina combines specialist expertise in constructive grief therapy, compassion focused therapy, appreciative inquiry, positive psychology, depth psychology, logotherapy, wow, journal and poetry therapy. She has authored an internationally appreciated book on grief and post traumatic growth. I've read it and really impressed with it, and currently writing her next on a unique model of resilience. Nina also runs an independent library movement from children from disadvantaged backgrounds. Today, she will talk to us about grief sensitivity. All of us in our work in transplant coordination, keep talking about grief counseling. But how many of us truly appreciate grief? How many truly understand it and how sensitive to we are to it? So over to Nina. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. It's an honor and a very precious privilege to be talking to the transplant coordinators. And namaste and good evening to everyone here in the room. Um, Before I start, I must share, though not with much pride, that in April 2015, I also went through the transplant coordination certification program conducted by Mohan Foundation. So I am on paper a certified transplant coordinator. It's a different thing that I haven't really done any coordination work. But why I went through that was because I'm the mother of a donor myself. And so all that I did without knowing, at some point in time, I felt the need to know the whole process also. And the other thing was that at that point in time, I was being called very often by All India Institute for talking to the potential donor family. So I thought, it is important for me to go there with a sense of, you know, well, being informed about this work, not just walking into this work um, like a raw clay and then experimenting with things. Rather than that, I should know what is it all about, and I shouldn't be talking in thin air. So that gives me a sense of fraternity with all of you. Um, I very firmly believe that yours is undoubtedly the toughest job in the world. Um, to approach a family that has just been bereaved, and in most of the cases, it's a traumatic bereavement, and in many cases, it's bereavement by loss of child. And so there are multiple layers which make this loss compounded and complex. And you move into that scenario, and the sensitivity with which you approach the family and you also attend to your work. Um, and there's a growing now recognition and growing receptivity to the organ donation work. hats off to you all. I mean, I come today, join you all with immense humility and curiosity. I'm here to learn from all of you as much as I have, whatever little I know in my limited understanding in the grief and trauma work, which I've been doing since 2006 and 7 plus. So, whatever little I know, I'm here to share with you. So, what I propose is we have 1 hour, right, Pallavi? So I'll try to run through the presentation, say in 40 minutes or so. I mean, I have a heavy attachment, but obviously we don't have time for that. So whatever is most important, I'll run through that for about 35, 50 minutes, 40 minutes. And then we can open the space up for people to ask, share, and freewheeling interaction with all. And please know I'm happy to stay 15, 10 minutes extra, whatever, if people want to, yeah. So with your permission, may I share the PPT?
Surely.
Okay. I have sharing rights?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see that.
Okay. Let me just, bring it down. Yes. So I request you all to please just read this and allow it to be absorbed by you all. Give yourself a few seconds, read it to yourself, read it aloud in your heart and mind, and allow the essence of the statement to be absorbed. And just ask yourself, what does this mean to you? And now let me take you to another sentence in this quotation, actually the sentence that comes before it. You can post in the chat few reactions, What does this statement really trigger in you? What does it evoke in you? Death belongs to life as birth does. Typically, we think of death as opposite of life. But the truth is that death is as much a part of life as any other significant event. Say, for example, birth and death, marriage, childhood, motherhood, parenthood, birth of a child, pregnancy, aging, growing from childhood to adolescence to adulthood, and things like that. These are all important events on the trajectory of life, and life comprises and encompasses all of this. So therefore, to think of death as opposite of life is not fair. Death is actually a part of life. Yeah. And what a beautiful way to put it, Gurudev puts it like the walk is in the raising of the foot as in the laying of it down. And that makes the life complete and whole. However, that said, unfortunately, not all losses are losses that we could easily come to terms with. The kinds of losses, and in fact, the kind of losses that you people work with are in most cases, losses that are pretty complex, traumatic. Let's get into what kind of losses are there. Losses, so therefore we understand that loss is the intricate warp and weft of life. There's no escape. Nobody has any escape from loss. But loss could be both death loss, non-death loss. Non-death loss, I assume most of you work in organizations. But if if you have somebody at home who's in a corporate life or in a more proper kind of organizational life, you ask them, the constant missed opportunities, denied opportunities, organizational politics, your lack of that organizational smartness and things like that. So many losses, so deprived opportunities are there, deprived increments and raises are there. So there are so many non-death losses in the organizational life. Now come to personal life, your health loss, There could be relationship disturbance. There could be an estranged relationship. Sometimes, God forbid, somebody has had a traumatic accident which has resulted in some kind of limbs being lost or limbs being affected. Or, for example, say, things like somebody is dealing with a terminal sickness, or if not terminal, at least a chronic, say, health condition. So so there's health loss in that case. Then we have something called ambiguous loss. What is ambiguous loss? Um, Ambiguous loss is mostly in case of disappearances. So the affected family does not know when to stop waiting and when to start grieving. Let me give you a very common, well-known example. About 10 years ago, I think in the month of March 2014 only, there was this aircraft of Malaysian Airlines which disappeared over South China Sea. Now, I have a friend whose wife was on board. Though he's been living with it with immense grace and courage and resilience and strength. But you can't miss that sense of vagueness and ambiguity about their loss and grief. Nobody in such a situation. So there are, disappearances in wars or socio-communal violence or calamities. For example, we've just had a calamity in Wayanad. Every year we have such floods in northeast of India. Right now, Tripura has. So people are lost just like that, and nobody knows what happened. So, the human mind is not willing to buy the proposition that now the loss is final.
Yeah.
So this ambiguous loss, it's there, but it's not there.
You don't get
Then you have, sorry?
No closure to that.
No closure for that. Grief, in many cases, doesn't have any closure. But in this case, you don't even know when to start grieving.
Yeah.
So then secondary loss. What happens, say, for example, somebody's passed away. Now, that person was the primary breadwinner. Now, for the family, it's not just the grief of losing that person, but also multiple secondary losses. So there's loss of financial security. There's loss of, the head of the family's position, that position, that chair is gone empty. Maybe the person who's gone, perhaps that was not the primary breadwinner, but that was the primary weaver of the family cohesion, or the family's whole relationship network. This person was the nodal point for that whole relationship network. So there's immense secondary loss because now the family is kind of scattered without that person. Then social identity loss happens in traditional society like ours. In fact, world over, many cultures have similar things. Departure of husband can mean social identity for the wife affected, especially if the wife was financially and socially dependent on husband or linked to the husband. So there could be multiple secondary losses. And then, of course, we have bereavement. Bereavement simply means death-based loss. A state that when somebody has lost someone close or loved one by death, then that is called the state of bereavement. Now, for the death-based loss, that is bereavement, C.S. Lewis, he's written a very powerful grief memoir by the name The Grief Observed. It's the shortest of all the grief memoirs that you could ever come across. Shortest, but something that will take you the longest to read. It is so deep, so intense. So that he wrote after the passing away of his wife, who battled with a terminal condition for quite some time. So this is what he says. I think many of you would agree with it. In some cases, death of a beloved is like an amputation, a phantom amputation. Your body looks intact, your body is functionally intact, but a part of you feels like it's not there. It's not uncommon to come across people who would feel like, my arm is no longer working, my arm has become dead wood. Somebody would say that my back is like, where's my back? My back has gone hollow. So the body-mind system, since body-mind system are so intricately connected, what happens when the agony, the trauma that the mind is bearing, and the shatteredness and the brokenheartedness that the heart is bearing, and the bereftness that the soul is experiencing, all of these together create physiological effects. So it does feel like in some cases the death-based grief does feel like, a part of you has got amputated. And this is the case with the death-based losses, bereavement. Now, there could be various ways. One is, say, normal death. What do we mean by normal death? The cause of death is known. The timing of death is like somebody has lived in some way, we can say, a full life, a complete life. Of course, a loss is a loss. Even if somebody goes at 90 or 95, your relationship, your attachment to that person will trigger intense grief in you. Having said that, there's some kind of consolation and solace that this person has lived a full life. This person has lived a kind of harmonious life, a life that was meaningful, happy in a quiet way or in a gentle way, and things like that. So that's a normal death. Most people don't need any kind of support to come to terms with the grief coming from normal death. But the kind of circumstances where you people, transplant coordinators, work, these are circumstances which are not, I think, in 99.9% cases, normal death. Please correct me, Pallavi, if I'm wrong.
A lot of them are young accident deaths.
Yeah. So I don't think 99.9% cases are not normal death where you people work. So what kind of death are these? These could be traumatic death, like she said. Most of the cases are accident-based. Then they could be anticipated but traumatic death. So, for example, somebody was accidented, has remained in that critical state for 10 days, 15 days. Now, when you have your loved one before you for 10, 15 days, the human programming is such that hope, you don't need to consciously invoke hope. Hope and faith will automatically be activated. Mind will activate it. So you could see that your loved one is critical. Doctors are saying or not saying, and then verbals or non-verbals or co-verbals are depicting some kind of a picture, and you can anticipate what's going to happen. But nonetheless, when it happens, 10 days, 15 days, 20 days of wait, and then it happens, it becomes a traumatic death, even though it could be anticipated. Then untimely or unexpected, in most cases, I think the accident victims are youngsters. So it is untimely and unexpected also, apart from being traumatic. Then this may not be the case in your case, but say socially negated losses are there. What are socially negated losses? The losses which, as per our societal, configuration, we don't even consider them to be losses. So, for example, pregnancy loss, stillbirth. These are still not just in our society, in many societies across the world, these are still considered more physiological events than psychological events. So it's like, it's something like body had fever and now fever is over. But it's not the case. The woman who's had a pregnancy loss, even one pregnancy loss, may take forever to come to terms with it, may take forever to start, emerging to some kind of normalcy after stillbirth or pregnancy loss. I myself had 3 miscarriages, so I know firsthand what it means when the woman is expected to just treat it like a, physical event and quickly come out of it. So this is socially negated loss. Then another kind of socially negated loss could be, say, 2 people whose relationship is either they have not yet declared it to the world or the world has not yet sanctioned or approved. So their loss, so one person goes and the other person is not even feeling like, it's legitimate for them to grieve. So this is a kind of grief which in grief psychology we call disenfranchised grief. Grief is there. The person is very much in grief, but that person's grief is not sanctioned. it's not supported, it's not approved, it's not allowed any space and chance. So that's another socially negated loss. Then you have stigmatized or unspeakable loss, some drug overdose loss, or death by suicide, things like that, the social stigma, the families don't want to talk about it. People appear with a certain facade before you, the social mourners, but as soon as your back is there, they have their own speculations and things to talk about. So these stigmatized or unspeakable losses are also there. And then ambiguous loss I have already talked about. So bereavement could happen by way of any or more. So there could be combination. In many cases that you people work with, the death is traumatic and it is untimely or unexpected. And it could also be sometimes, unspeakable loss. So for example, um, I have counseled the family where um, the family knew, the police knew that the child had jumped in, the youngster, he was about a 26, 27-year young uh, boy. He had jumped in front of the running train. So, so it was like, now everybody knew, but everybody knew that they are not supposed to talk about it, not even acknowledge. So, supposed to, when I say, I mean supposed to in their family's dynamics. Their supposed to is not necessarily has to become yours or my supposed to. So it was their family's dynamics that guided their decision uh, to just bury it under the carpet and ignore the elephant in the room, and just treat it like no, any other kind of accident. Eventually, they did donate cornea, and they got some help from police, and police made sure that it was treated like an accident, not death by suicide. So, so in that moment, what happens? In that moment, also their trauma is complicated. But thereafter, the kind of grief that they will live with for the rest of their life, when the family members are also not willing to acknowledge it amongst themselves, this only adds multiple layers to their grief. And it makes it what in grief psychology, the term that we use is complicated grief or prolonged grief or a combination of both. So traumatic bereavement, what are the kind of characteristics to that? In most cases, it is sudden and or unexpected. In many cases, it is untimely. Obviously, when it is accident or say violence or calamity or things like that, or suicide, it is not natural. In some cases, it could be ambiguous also. So, for example, the case that I just shared, in that, uh, the family had been having some internal conflict dynamics, and there was psychological stress in the family, which had been there for quite some time. And that particular morning, the mother could sense that that young man perhaps needed some time with her. The young man was looking very kind of, emotionally disturbed to the mother. The mother also wanted to sit with him, but it was supposedly that, Ashtami day, when the North Indian families, especially Punjabi families, they do that Kanjak Pujan thing. And so that Ashtami's halwa puri, etc., needed to be made. And this lady's mother as well as mother-in-law both were there in the house, and they both wanted the puja to be done in a proper way and things like that. So did husband. She wanted that day to be excused of the housework, which she felt that she was always overburdened with, like many women are. So, but the family's elders, that is the two elderly women, mother and the mother-in-law and the husband, they prevailed upon. And so, so in that hustle bustle, nobody noticed when the boy disappeared from the house. So, so what happened in between in the morning when she had given a cup of tea to the son, and the son looked disturbed, and she asked him, "Do you need something?" And he said, "No, you get free, and then we'll talk." From that moment to when the next day his body was discovered, on the tracks, and there's an eyewitness that says that he had seen the boy jumping in front of the train. What happened in between creates such a huge sense of ambiguity to this family's traumatized mind that for them to come to a decision is very hard. Imagine now you're called by the hospital to talk to a family like this. Now you do not know the dynamics that's happened. Somebody wants to talk?
So Anushri, please mute yourself. Anushri?
So,
yeah. Ganesh, if you could do that for us, please.
So now imagine that you are called to counsel a family like this, and you have no background idea as to what is making them, they're distraught, obviously they are traumatized, and they are going through intense trauma, and you cannot expect a normal kind of conduct or behavior from them. But you have to tune into the here and now space to be able to sense that there's some more hidden layers to their intense trauma than what you could possibly imagine, what you could possibly what is possibly predictable. Behind that there's some more. So when you come across a case like this, then perhaps you need lot more care and lot more caution. More than care, I would say, more than care and compassion and connection, I would say you also need lot more caution, because the family has chosen to hide certain things. The family's also got police on their side. So, and you do not know. And you're approaching them like you would approach any other kind of similar, trauma case. So this ambiguous loss makes it even more complicated. Then there's one particular one that I want to highlight. You would have read ultimate bereavement. Ultimate bereavement is the nomenclature for loss of child. In grief psychology world over, it is recognized that loss of child of any age and death in any manner, sudden or anticipated, or by chronic condition, critical condition, accident, stillbirth, pregnancy loss, um, early age, infancy, toddlership, adolescence, adulthood, at any stage or age, and by any manner, loss of child is considered the ultimate kind of bereavement. It's the hardest to cope. That's what grief psychology says. I'm not necessarily putting it across to you as some kind of a certain and absolute and non-negotiable truth. You would have seen and experienced perhaps yourself some other kind of losses. And, it's like, just for your knowledge, I'm telling you so. Why? Because many cases, the people that you go to counsel, as Pallavi also just mentioned, and I know myself, are youngsters, So it's there's suddenness or unexpectedness, untimeliness, unnatural manner of death, and then the fact that this is ultimate bereavement also. So just imagine how many layers of complexity of grief could be there. Now, this is just in continuation of this ultimate bereavement thing only, sharing a quotation from my book. Shall I move on?
Yeah.
Okay, so in traumatic bereavement, what stands out for you? Please read this quotation and then I will take you through that. Read this in conjunction with the statement that we have, just read from C.S. Lewis, which is like, death is like an amputation. So in traumatic bereavement, the word that stands out is trauma. the kind of contacts that you have, the nature of your contacts, the timing of your contact is at a time when the grief has not even begun. Grief has not even begun to be registered. And I'm not necessarily hinting you in the direction of that popular 5 stages model, which is all, hogwash. Towards the end of her life, even Elizabeth Kubler-Ross herself debunked that model. It was meant for those dying, not for those who are bereaved. There could be minor here and there, some kind of similarity, but that linearity that, there's denial, there has to be denial only. No. The stage when you get in contact with a potential donor family, no question of denial even. Right now, there's only raw, intense, absolutely raw, very fragile, very, very touchy trauma. This trauma is like, just been scratched badly and no first aid available, no first aid possible. This is that level of trauma. So when you come in contact with people, there's no grief yet. The grief has not yet even been registered. Grief is a deeply personal, uniquely personal, internal experience. It's different from mourning. They are used interchangeably, but mourning is a social process. Like, in our Indian society, we have those 10 days, 11 days, 13 days, 17 days. Some people have 40 days, kind of a social mourning space. So mourning is a social and externalized process. But grief is an intensely personal and intimately internal process. It actually begins perhaps even after, or maybe before mourning also, but this is something that starts to make its presence felt only after some time. The time when you come in contact with people, it's intense, raw trauma. At the cost of repeating myself, I'm repeating this terminology. Please register this. So what is happening there? There is absolutely shattering shock that, I don't have to explain to you. This total disbelief. There could be psychological numbness, that emotional anesthesia, like we say. This total shattering, the person could be either in a hysterical reaction or gone stony silent. There could be immense amount of anger towards many characters, towards maybe police who did not do the right thing in time, towards maybe the ambulance, towards maybe the trauma care medical team, towards maybe some other, characters in the story, like maybe it was a car being driven by somebody else and they were being reckless. And so because of somebody else's reckless driving, their beloved, was lost. Or they could be just a vague anger, anger at the unfairness and the unkindness of the loss. So anger to whoever we may call supreme grace, God, or anybody, but because it's not socially considered correct to be angry with God, so this anger also remains vague. But anger could be a very, very dominant thing. Then there's despair, because it's still not believed that, especially in the kind of cases that you people work with. So at some point in time when the ventilators switched off, and so that's a very surreal phase. The person is gone, but the person is very much here. And the family finally gives consent to take the ventilator off. And that's a very surreal stage. The family is not able to register what has happened, even though they might have taken a cognitive decision, they might have taken a mental decision, but at a being level, their being is not able to register and process what's happening. There could be paralyzing fear, like you expect more loss. When such an intense loss happens with a how do I put it? I have to put it the way it is, with the ferocity of suddenness. When the ferocity of suddenness is so much, such a loss has happened, then human mind the primal instincts to our reptilian brain are such that we anticipate more loss. We anticipate more danger. This reptilian brain gets automatically activated, and this is only anticipating more threat. So there's paralyzing fear, and perhaps it is not showing up externally, but the person inside is feeling. Um, our brain, human brain has three predominant uh, emotional affect systems. One is a threat system, other is a drive system, and third is a soothing system. So threat system is our, primitive brain, which is here, the reptilian brain, back of your neck, at the drop point of your the spinal cord, where it is shifting, transitioning into the brain side. Now this is the oldest part of our brain. Its shape is like a serpentine shape, so that's why it is called reptilian brain. The job of this brain, the oldest brain, the job of this brain is to ensure safety. So this brain remains in a hyper vigilant mode. So you can imagine, thousands of 50,000 years ago, 1 lakh years ago, when we were living through the Stone Age and all that. So there was constant, threat of uh, even humans attacking humans, not just animals attacking humans and things like that. So there was always, hyper vigilant mode humans had. Everything was a potential source of threat. So when this threat system is fully activated, all the cognition is gone into suspension. A person maybe is looking kind of coherent from the outside. You're trying to talk, but you can intuitively sense that the person is not registering anything. So one of the reasons why this person is not registering, of course, there could be anger, there could be numbness, there could be despair, but one of the reasons could also be that this paralyzing fear happening. The threat system is fully activated. So when threat system is activated, the other two systems, the drive system and the soothing system, which are more prefrontal, more sophisticated parts of the brain, they go into suspension. They become kind of inaccessible. Then there could be guilt. As I said, maybe the person driving is also a family member, but this person was driving recklessly. And then this accident happened. So there could be immense amount of guilt, not just on part of that person, if that person has survived, but on part of other family members also. Why didn't we counsel that person enough or in time to be sensible about their driving and things like that? Many what ifs, what if we had done this, what if we had done that, if only this could happen, if only. So multiple guilts, most of which are kind of, they may seem irrational to you, illogical to you, but a brain traumatized by a very fresh traumatic loss does not know logic. So their guilt, which may seem so don't try to counsel them in their guilt, especially when the trauma and the grief and the loss is so raw, so fresh. In the immediacy, especially, the brain will not register anything. Then there could be, related to guilt, could be disappointment and resentment. There's one thing, when such a loss happens, even if the person was 70 years or 80 years, this shattering of what we call assumptive world of beliefs and life. What is assumptive world? All of us, we live on certain, set of worldviews, set of beliefs about life, which is like, oh, bad things don't happen to good people. Oh, we are such God-fearing family. Why would somebody want to harm us? And then very terrible accidents happen even with most sensible drivers. Oh, why did this happen with this person? He was such a sensible driver. He was driving in his own lane. He was driving proper speed, everything. So they are assumptive world on which we operate on a day-on-day basis. We make our own shortcuts in life, which are our beliefs, our core values. Now suddenly all of that seems like it's come totally torn apart. Whatever made sense in our life, suddenly it feels like, what happened to these beliefs? Where is this thing called God? Where is this phenomenon called God? Why did they not, honor our good life, our set life, our coherent life? So all this comes shattering. Now, when you come into the scene, what you must remember. First, you're not grief counseling. As I said, grief has not yet even begun. It's intense trauma. Even in a normal death, grief does not begin from zero moment itself. Grief is something that starts to simmer, and then it it needs its own space. It needs its own, quietness. Um, Whatever is happening before could be trauma or social mourning, but grief is something that takes time to show up. So remember, you're not grief counseling. You're seeking to counsel a potential donor family for organ donation. So what you must expect is raw trauma, as I said, as I've already explained. Also expect a sense of resignation, quiet surrender, grace, search for meaning, and actually in most cases expect a combination of both these. The same person could exhibit both stony silence as well as search for meaning. Two different members of the family could be exhibiting very conflicting set of emotions, and that will make your job even more complicated. I've shared two stories in my book about couples who lost their young ones, and then the donation happened, and these are true stories. Donation happened, and how the dynamics between the couple kind of complicated their trauma and grief so much more. So, but nonetheless, we being humans, we are never black or white. We are always a combination. So expect a combination. And why do I emphasize expect a combination? Because while you have to maintain sensitivity to anger, to stony silence, to wailing, denial, resentment, guilt, and all of that, you have to also keep an active eye open for the pocket that you can notice, the pocket from where you can make an entry. And that pocket comes when you find somebody in a state of quiet surrender or searching for meaning, or looking acceptant, though not yet acceptant, but looking like kind of looking up to hear, to listen. So you expect this, keep your eye open for the conducive pockets where you can make entry, but also at the same time maintain utmost sensitivity to all of that goes into raw trauma. Remember, there's nothing for you to handle, fix, manage, come to, get at, arrive at, solve. Grief and trauma and loss are not a disease or a disorder or a problem or a depression, something that you can fix. There's nothing to be fixed in this. Grief is a normal and natural response to any kind of loss. As I mentioned in the beginning, non-death loss or death-based loss. Any kind of loss, the human programming is such that we are bound to experience grief. Grief is a normal and natural reaction to any kind of loss. And there's nothing to handle in this. It's not a disease. It's not a disorder. What you need to bring, remember, what you need to bring is presence. Mohan Foundation, Organ India, some other organization, Notto, any other organization might have certified you, given you all the training. So you have the processes in place, you know what forms to be filled, you know what process to follow, you know what is the protocol, you know what is the rigmarole and all of that, you know what is the drill, everything. So you know the process, you also know the procedures, everything. However, all of that, for that to manifest, for that to happen, what you need is to bring the whole of your presence. The only thing that will stay with you is your presence in the moment. All that you learn is tool. To make it happen, you have to be present. Be willing to witness, because what's unfolding before you is extremely shattering. Be willing to wait, but of course you cannot wait forever. So then what? Be willing to keep sensing, and you can sense what is emerging in the moment only when you become fully here and now present. Nudge. Remember, you counseling for you here means only nudge. It will have to happen in words and phrases. It cannot happen in full sentences, if I'm right. I have interacted with many families for cornea donation. So I know, it's never like you speak full proper coherent sentence in one go. You speak in words, phrases, then you take pauses. There are sometimes pauses, more pauses than verbal content. The help that you provide eventually, say, assume the family gives consent. Whatever work you're doing has to happen in a no noise manner. The family is already having bombarded noise inside their head, and there's quite a bit of buzz that is happening around them in the hospital system. Let's not add more noise. This has to be with minimal words, minimal sounds that you make. Speak only as much as you really need to. Don't even say an extra word by way of, no, be strong, you will be well. Cliches and platitudes, please, for God's sake, avoid. Not just with your potential donor family, but anybody in your own personal life also, your neighborhood, relatives, anybody else that you go to be with them in their grief. One thing you please, please, please throw out of your pocket is cliches and platitudes. Be brave, let go, move on, be strong. Time will heal. Time will heal. No, thank you so much. Time does not heal. Time does not heal. We heal ourselves, and for that we need time as well as space, both, and opportunity from our life. Maybe your life can give you, is willing to give you time, 5 months, 6 months, 1 year, as if grief has a trajectory. It doesn't have a trajectory. But maybe your life is not giving you chance.
It all happens for the best.
They have organized engagement of a cousin or your extended families, another child, in 2 weeks time. So they're not giving you chance. So please avoid cliches and platitudes and things like that. Accept or withdraw has to be a very sensing based, very intuitive decision. I don't have to tell you about that. I'm sure I have so much more to learn from you. How do you do this intuitive calibration outside into what's happening in front of your eyes and inside into your own sense about will it work or not? I mean, I have so much to learn from you guys, but what I know is that you have to make a very sensing based and not much delayed decision about if you need to withdraw. Maybe I would like to hear more from you. Quiet gratitude, whether or not it works. Quiet gratitude doesn't mean you have to say this outside, but inside you. Why? Because you need to now start reclaiming your own energy for your own life. So when you're transitioning from this, if it worked, gratitude is obvious. If it didn't work, even then, quiet gratitude for all this experience, this process which has left you obviously more humble, more wise, humbler, wiser, stronger, calmer, more graceful. So just quiet gratitude within yourself, because you need to now transition back to your life, which is supposedly all normal. And you're going from a completely abnormal set of events, going back to your life. This transition is not easy on you. I mean, I'm just speaking words, but I can't even imagine what you people must be going through when you leave this space and return back home. You don't return back home just in a very normal way, as if, previous day in the evening you return back home from office. Not like that. I can imagine there must be so much upheaval, so much turmoil that you must be carrying with you. So you need to kind of, start cleansing this energy in your transition back from this place back to home. Remember, you are there to help the cause, help a yet unknown potential recipient, but most importantly, also help this family. Because we all know how organ donation, cornea donation, tissue donation could be something that could help them later bring a sense of meaning to their suffering. It will not take away their grief, but it will perhaps help them alleviate the suffering that comes with grief, the pain that comes with grief, right? So so you are actually helping them as well. So this is my little framework for help. First is hold space with all your presence. We have talked about presence. Second is you are there to witness something really traumatic, really tragic, full of turmoil, full of turbulence. So be very mindful and patient about how you tune into you don't have a lot of time. The space around is not conducive at all. Hospital systems are buzzing with their own stuff. So in that, how do you sanitize your own internal state? You sanitize your own, because you need to tune in. You sanitize your own internal state by summoning more and more mindfulness from within. Whether you cultivate practice of meditation in your daily life, or you cultivate a practice of garden walk in your daily life, or taking care of plants, or music, or dance, or art, anything that helps you become more and more mindful. That is for you to figure out. But in your daily life, bring in something that helps you grow mindfulness and actually grow it deeper every day. Because mindfulness is going to be your one big tool when you have to, in that buzzing space, stand there, create your own little space and keep tuning in. What's happening? Snakes and ladder. You have to move one step, then you have to withdraw on the side. Then you have to talk to one family member, then you have to talk to another family member, then you have to talk to hospital, then you have to talk to yourself, maybe your colleague. So many things. You're tuning in, tuning out, tuning in, tuning out. And in that, mindfulness is your best friend. Listen with your whole being. I insist, listen with your eyes. You may feel like I have made some typo error here, but I'm conscious about what I have written. Listen with your eyes, not just your ears. We've talked about, we know about verbals and non-verbals. I wonder how many of you know, I assume many of you must be knowing already, that human communication actually 93% is by way of non-verbals. The voice modulations, the eye movements, the what we typically call body language, and all of that. But even in that 93%, almost 35 to 40% is only voice. The modulation, the the pitch, the volume, the timing, the spacing with which the words are delivered. So about 35 to 40% is voice alone. So observe the characteristics of voice delivery. Obviously, we cannot expect somebody who's just been so traumatically bereaved to be speaking in a normal way. But nonetheless, we don't lose our original style just like that. So original style will exhibit you, some hints, some feelers it will give you. Be very alert to what I call co-verbals. Co-verbals is, for example, we're not able to sense whether this person has just gone quiet, and this person is wearing a stony silence, and you don't know, this family is kind of not giving you any obvious or not obvious hints, whether they are even listening to what you're requesting their attention for. They're not giving you much sign through verbal or through non-verbal. Pay attention to what I call co-verbal. Co-verbals is suddenly in between will be like this. When I'm saying, I don't know whether you're listening it or getting to hear it or not. So I'm speaking it a little louder. But in reality, it will not be louder. It will be kind of very gentle, almost. You miss it, and you're not attentive, and you miss it. Kind of, you're saying something, and the person like this. This will be almost not there. So be very attentive. I go back to mindfulness. Mindfulness will give you this gift of attentiveness. Be very attentive to co-verbals. These co-verbals will tell you whether this person, even if unconsciously, is listening to you or not. And if this person is listening to you, are they listening with interest and curiosity, or are they listening only to just get you off their chest? So co-verbals, sighs, pauses, like these, pay very close attention to them. They will give you a lot of data about what's going on, how this person is processing your request and suggestion. So take this as an important data. Then, of course, all that sensing has to be very perceptive, very in the moment. You should step in or you should withdraw, is all entirely based on your sensing. So perceptiveness is very high, that you need that sense of discernment, that sense of emotional literacy. So if you people can, and if Pallavi can organize, maybe, Pallavi, take them through some workshops on emotional sensing, emotional agility. I'm not necessarily meaning emotional intelligence, but, the zero stage where emotional literacy, where even before the verbalization happens, what happens before that, below the bar of verbalization, what happens, how to be able to make sense of things which are not being verbalized in the emotional literacy spectrum. So all of this help model is all about, if I could put it in one word, two words, it's all about presencing and mindfulness. Mindfulness will also, it will not just enhance your attentiveness, but it will also give you sufficient input about, can you expedite or do you need to slow down? How to pace your own work. That will also, perhaps you would be able to collaborate only when you become more and more mindful in the moment. Because you're dealing with so many people. There's so many characters. Maybe within the potential donor family also, there are maybe more than 2, 3, 4 people. Or even if they are just 2 people, they are kind of totally anti each other. And these are the 2 stories that I have shared in my book. One couple is already estranged, they are separated, they are divorced, and whatever was the residual of their estrangement and divorce, suddenly those residuals also come and add to it, and there's accusation and there's suspicion by one partner of the other partner's desire to donate. And there's another case where there's supposedly normal family, normal couple, happy couples, as in all the social parlance, what looks like a very normal, all is well kind of family. And how the very, the subject of donation, how this lands on this couple and what it does to their relationship thereafter. So you people have seen these cases way more than I can kind of even imagine. So, but mindfulness is your best friend in this whole thing. What you need to bring, sorry.
Just say, when you were talking about your mindfulness and internal tuning, I think it becomes so important, but because very often in hospitals, when a coordinator goes in to speak to a family, the pressure of getting a yes so that more transplants happen, it's not so much about the family, it's about getting a consent so transplants happen. So how to leave that pressure behind when you go into the room, and be with the family and reminding yourself, right now you're here with this family, that is what your focus is, rest is outside. And I think their mindfulness.
Three things. Mindfulness comes from full whole being presence. If you could bring the whole of your whole being presence in the moment.
Yeah.
And when you bring yourself in the moment, obviously that pressure, that anxiety of making it work, it's like, I'm sorry, it may seem like a simplistic or trivial comparison, but imagine, if your child is writing board exams and all that he can worry about is only like, what will be my parents' reaction if my marks are only this much? So what will the child perform? So in the moment mindfulness, in the moment presence would perhaps also help you for a moment park that pressure, not ignore that pressure,
Yeah.
not deny that pressure, not suppress that pressure, not forget it, but for a moment, say that let me park my car in this parking for that 1 hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just remind yourself that why are you here? You are here for that very purpose. Isn't that? The very fact that you are there means that aspiration, that objective is paramount for you. The moment you reframe it as your objective to be there, the word pressure would find a way to reframe itself. I would encourage you all to find your own ways to reframe the word pressure into something else. Is this inspiration? Is this aspiration? Is this responsibility? And just ask yourself that if it is creating anxiety in me, how could perhaps I use this anxiety instead of letting it use me, consume me? And for that, mindfulness and presence. And I would encourage you once again, take them through the emotional literacy, especially the below the bar, before the literacy starts to become manifest and show up externally and verbalized. Before that, all that happens before that. Because with mindfulness, if you also have that kind of emotional agility, perhaps you can make a quicker sensing that it will not work here. Or it will work. I must stay put. Either ways. Your sensing would be more agile. Your sensing perhaps would be more tuned in. Your sensing perhaps would be of better quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
if I was hoping if you're
very quickly, very quickly, I'll just finish so this I don't think I need to repeat, but this I want to spend just 2 minutes on. Please, please, please remember, the caregiver needs the maximum amount of care. The charity begins at home. Please remember, though you are carrying the so-called pressure of the expectation pressure of your job, but if you let that expectation pressure become expectation fatigue, then I'm sorry to say, I don't have to say, but I'm sorry. What will happen, you all know. I don't have to say that. So please remember to calmly and gently hold yourself. Keep tuning in within as much as you are tuning in outside. Keep recentering yourself. For that, nothing better than deep breathing. Keep deep breathing and allow a little bit more time in the pause in between inhale and exhale. Exhale more fully. Maybe inhale could be shorter, but exhale take longer time. Exhaling. So if you're inhaling, I'm not asking you to do in a conscious way, but just sit down at your home and try it. And then slowly and gradually you will, get the hang of it. If you're inhaling to the count of 4, then try to hold it for the count of 5 and exhale to the count of 6. Exhaling should be more full because exhaling is what will take the toxic energy out of you, the heated up energy out of you. And until the exhaling is proper, the new inhale is also not going to get much space in your body. So deep breathing, abdominal breathing, keep anchoring yourself within. Self-compassion, loads and loads and loads of it. Self-care, hydration is a must for anybody in grief, anybody in trauma, anybody in vicarious trauma like you people are. You're in vicarious trauma in that space. Hydration, first thing. Just remember why I just mentioned about the primitive brain becoming hypervigilant when the threat system is activated. In that situation, the first thing that gets hit in the body is our water level. There's internal dehydration that happens. And we all know how much we need to keep ourselves hydrated. 2/3, 70% of our structure is all water. So remember to hydrate yourself. So keep sipping gentle sips of water, small sips of water. Nourishment, of course, movement. Movement is very, very essential when it comes to self-care. Even if you just get up from one room and go to the other room, after 45 minutes, 50 minutes, just get up for 2 minutes, change your energy, just shake up your body or whatever. But movement is very important. Sleep, rest, self-healing, find your own way, what works for you. For me, nature walks are extremely therapeutic. Writing is extremely therapeutic. For some people, meditation is therapeutic. Find your own way, music, anything. This is very important. I have to underline willingness to ask for help. What happens is the people who are in helping professions, sometimes feel very awkward about expressing our own vulnerability and admitting our own vulnerability, acknowledging our own vulnerability, and asking for help for ourselves. But therapists also need therapy. I'd been into grief and trauma work since, as I said, cusp of 2006 and 7. And my loss happened in 2017, third quarter, towards the end of 2017. Next month, it will be 10 years. But it's extremely hard, if not impossible, to be your own client and be your own therapist. I needed help. So give yourself permission to ask for help if you need. Maybe you need it from a peer, maybe you need it from a professional. Give yourself permission. Do not allow all that vicarious trauma to silently keep accumulating within your system. Especially if in succession, 3, 4, 5 cases that you've done, God forbid, if they have all failed, then, this additional trauma of I'm not performing enough. So give yourself permission to ask for help. Now, as you can see, there are so many more slides, which means this is an intense subject that needs so much more time. What I have shared with you today is not even keyhole glimpse. And floor is open for anybody who wants to ask, share, talk, just like that. What I can say is that though your work does not directly involve active grief work, as I said, grief has not even begun yet. But nonetheless, if there's somebody who has interest, who wants to, then perhaps Pallavi and I, we can think of organizing a special cohort exclusively for transplant coordinators of full-fledged proper grief training, which obviously needs time, more sessions and longer sessions. So over to you. Yeah. Over to you.
Does anybody have any question, any sharing? So for me, Neena, my understanding of grief is extreme sadness, in for lack of other words.
Sorry to interrupt you, but let me request your team to pin you as well. Maybe spotlight both of us.
Okay.
I mean the two people who are talking.
Yeah, Ganesh, if could do that. So when somebody gets news of grief, so in our context, I'm talking about transplant coordinators, and we are, of course, our work begins with somebody losing somebody. So is that news not grief for the family, is what I'm asking. Neena, you're mute, yeah.
Yeah, I was just unmuting myself. So repeat your question. Just a second. What happened to my screen? Just a second. Yeah, my screen got minimized accidentally.
Okay.
So you're saying when the news is broken, is it not grief yet?
Yeah.
So yes, it is grief, but the grief has not yet begun to manifest, and maturation of grief will take forever. Will take very long time. What in that moment, especially the kind of cases that you people work with, what in that moment is happening is intense raw trauma. Why? Why am I saying so? Because there's much more disbelief in that moment and refusal to accept the news. Much more anger. You know what, in that popular Kubler-Ross model, she talks of denial. Here it is refusal to even allow the news to be accepted. Grief will happen only after I have registered loss. No? Here the mind is so agonized, so traumatized, so laden with whys, question. that it's not even allowing the brain to register the news. When the registering of the news happens, that's when registering of the emotions which starts surfacing, and the emotions come in as an entangled ball. There's no one single emotion that's happening. So many of them are happening, and it's an entangled ball. Those who do knitting, they would understand what I mean by entangled ball. So it is, yes, it is grief, but it is not really grief yet, because it's totally like the whole thing is trauma laden. Grief will have trauma in it. Trauma will also have grief in it. They're both closely entwined processes and experiences. However, I'm not saying there's no grief, but the grief is yet to register. Grief is yet to manifest, yet to show up.
Does anybody have any question, any sharing?
Have I answered your question,
Yes.
Pallavi?
Anybody wants to say something? Sukhvinder, all of you people that have worked with families.
You know, I have a friend. He's the pioneer of poetic medicine, and he was born with a congenital condition, which created a neuro condition in his right leg, and he lived with that, so to say, disability. I could say, deformity or disability, for a long time. But somehow, though he was not fully functional, but he kept himself functional, and he did many things, creative things, and everything. But eventually, when his leg was amputated, it had to be amputated. It was a deliberate decision, well considered decision, medically supervised decision. Then the whole process was planned, surgery was planned, amputation happened. It took him a long time to transition from the trauma of losing his leg to actually start noticing that he's not just start grieving his loss of leg now, but he had been actually doing some kind of anticipatory grief since long.
Yeah.
Because this leg, in whatever condition it was,
had no
had
use.
already, it was already a significant loss in his life.
Yeah.
So trauma takes up a lot of space. Coming back to your question.
All right. Anybody has any questions? Any sharing? People who are working with families? Parul, I can see Sukhvinder here. I can see Lija. Anything that you have to say here? Bholeshwar wants to ask uh, how to act or react during the traumatic situation within the families. Like the wife of the potential donor is crying in the counseling room, repenting. What as a grief counselor I can do?
First and foremost, what I have already shared at length, presencing. Presence, that whole pyramid of a helping professional, where what on the top shows is your effectiveness with procedures, the process that you're following. But what really lies underneath, the biggest chunk of the iceberg, the pyramid, is presence. If you are fully present in the unfolding drama, if I may use the word, that unfolding drama, if you are fully present in that, then you do not necessarily even have to address that lady. Maybe her state is getting further compounded by some relatives being unnecessarily noisy, filling up the space with unnecessary, voice clutter. Or maybe the hospital staff is being very pushy with her. Then you could perhaps indirectly help her by managing these characters in the room. The other is mindfulness. The more mindfully you are tuned into her, the whole process and unfolding drama, the better will be your sensing about, how to approach this lady. Should I approach her only with non-verbals? Should I just sit with her with a glass of water in hand and not say anything? Just keep sitting with her with a glass of water in hand, maybe slowly and gradually take a hand on her shoulder, maybe just kind of hold her hand with both hands. You know, how much time do I need to just keep investing in the non-verbal connection before I say a word? All of these intuitive sensings you will know only when you're fully and mindfully present in the moment. There's no one thumb formula, single thumb, thumb rule that will work with everybody. With everybody, your sensing will have to be in the moment.
We'll take one last question. Supinna wants to know, what do I do when the family is not willing to talk at all? They've gone into a silent zone.
Just please keep reminding yourself you do not have to necessarily do it to 100% success. That your organizations very well recognize the fact that in most cases, it will be a no. You tell me what's your success rate. I'm sorry to use this word success. We shouldn't have any kind of success like this. But you tell me what's your conversion rate.
It's low. In most hospitals, it's not even
1%.
Perhaps not so low.
5,
but,
10,
20,
20.
%.
Yeah. So when you enter the space, please remind yourself. You could tell yourself like this, that today I don't have to add one more conversion. I don't have to avoid one more non-conversion. Reframe it to yourself in your mind, saying that today my attempt will be to maximize the conversion rate. The moment you tell yourself today I have to make it happen, maybe you would actually notice that your own energy was more at odds with the cause.
Actually, after all of these years, till date, when a family says yes, that's for me I wonder at it. It's the no seems the more natural response. You know, this family is grieving, they've lost their loved one in a private hospital, there are huge bills, you know, there is general distrust in the private sector, and in all of that they said yes. For me, that is the miracle. And when a family says no, I actually find that pretty, I mean, that seems like, obviously kya karte bichare, how can they have said yes to it, you know? So even after all this time, the yes comes as the miracle.
Can people come on screen, and if we can take
Most
a
people
picture?
have left by now.
Okay, no problem.
If we have more people, maybe one of my colleagues would have taken a picture earlier and we can share that.
Okay, then please share it with me. And this is a book in case those interested in. Can somebody take a picture, please, right now?
Yeah.
So this is a book that screenshot. Your phone is coming.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe screenshot.
Okay.
If you are interested in
I've
learning more
taken it,
about
Mama. I've
grief,
taken it.
thank you so much. Grief and post-traumatic growth, both. The book's greater focus is on post-traumatic growth. Pallavi was very generous to help me approach Lalita ji for a very beautiful advanced praise blurb that she wrote for this book. Here it is, and Pallavi was instrumental in that, and she joined book signing also. So eternally grateful to you and to Lalita ji.
Thank you, Neena. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to the rest of you for joining. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye for now, and have a good flight, comfortable flight, happy flight. All the best wishes for Anushka.
Thank you so much, Neena. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.